So the band of Foreigner's Journey, playing the music of Foreigner and Journey, have toured the UK and Europe for the last 10 years, headlining a number of festivals and playing to packed theatres and venues, safely establishing themselves as one of the most respected and known tribute shows around. Today, I am very happy to be joined by keyboard player Lee Sculthorpe, aka Scully. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Nice to be on board.
It's fantastic to have you here, man. And we do want to really dive into that music of, you're playing this great music from Foreigner and from Journey. I want to dive into that. But if it's okay, what we'll do is we'll start from the very beginning. Can you tell me
Yeah.
how you started in music?
Well, it goes right back to my childhood, really. Like when I was basically at primary school, without going on too long about it all. But I remember because my brother's 5 years older than me, so he started secondary while me and my sister, because I'm a twin, we're still in primary school. And in his music lesson, he brought home. I don't know if you remember them. I mean, I think you can still get them, but they're like little Bon Tempi blow organ, and it had a pipe,
Yes. Yeah.
and you have to sit there blowing on it. And I was like, "What the hell's that?" And he says, "Oh, I borrowed it from school." And so we just had it kicking around for a few weeks. And I remember sitting and, blowing on it and thinking, doing one finger notes and things. And I remember, I think the Walk of Life by Dire Straits had not long come out in the charts, because this is around like the early 80s. And so I thought, oh, I'll try and learn that. And I did find the notes and I did figure it out. But the thing is, you can only play for so long before you started going dizzy, because you was constantly having to blow. But that was my initial start in first ever playing a keyboard or something. And then my friends sold me on another Bon Tempi, but a blow organ proper keyboard. But you press down like the buttons to hold the chords, and
Okay.
the more buttons you press, the quieter it got, because it's running out of air. But that was really the very start of it all. And my brother also played as well, and he was always a little bit better than me, actually, at the beginning stages of our keyboard discovery. And so, as a joint Christmas present, this is again like mid 80s, my dad bought us a proper, what we considered our first proper ever synthesizer keyboard, and it was a Casio CZ3000.
Nice.
I've dug out a photograph. There you go. Look, there it is. Look, the
Wow.
original. That's where it all began. At the age of 11 or whatever I was there, 10, 11. And it was, didn't have any aftertouch, or no, wasn't even touch sensitive. It was just one sound, and the sounds were pretty primitive by today's standards. But that's where it all began. And that I got the bug. My brother kind of lost the bug, and I carried it on. And then I just played and played and played that to death, until I eventually got old enough to, start Saturday jobs and save money. And I bought my own keyboard that I considered the business. And I remember the M1 Korg M1 was always everybody's envy. Everybody seemed to have one, and I remember seeing Roachford on Top of the Pops, and they had three. How dare they have three? you know. So I worked my nuts off on a summer in between school and college, when I was about 16, 17. And I saved up £1,000 cash, and I went to Sticks in Peterborough,
Right.
and I bought the Korg M1, and that's me
Fantastic.
that's me kissing it when I take it out of the box.
That's great.
That's where it all began, really. And then that's when I really started to get momentum with it, and really start to find my feet with it and my love for it. And it's just gone on and on and on from then, really.
Fantastic, man. I mean, what a great time to pick to play the keyboards in the sort of early 80s, when there's so many, so much keyboards around. I mean, who were you listening to? What bands were you listening to then?
Well, initially, going back again to my childhood, I got the bug from my dad's Beatles vinyl when I was about 5.
Yeah.
And I've always had an interest in music, but I didn't play then, obviously. So obviously, when I got into instruments and been able to play keyboards, it was around sort of the mid 80s again, 86, and Living on a Prayer came out.
Nice.
And I remember Van Halen's "Why Can't This Be Love" came out. Boo, doo, doo, boo, doo, doo. And that was, I
Right.
remember my end of primary school dance before we went into secondary school. I kept requesting that song because I just love that sound. I didn't know what made it or how it was made, but and then obviously Europe Final Countdown came out about the same time. So all those songs seem to be sort of keyboard orientated type songs, and Jump Van Halen came out roughly around that time,
Yeah.
a couple of years previous, and that's kind of where I started to just to naturally flow into the sort of the rock edge of it, with the keyboard. So obviously sit there trying to learn the Final Countdown and bits and bobs like that. But that's where it all really began for me musically. And I was never really into the Britpop Duran Duran type keyboard stuff, which most people assume I would be because that stuff was just drenched in keyboards.
Sure.
But I never liked it. I never liked any of that stuff. Spandau Ballet, all those types of bands, and that new age. I was just from the Beatles really, and then straight into sort of your Van Halen, Bon Jovi, Europe type stuff, and I've kind of really been that way ever since. I haven't changed much over the years. But my musical taste has broadened somewhat, but I still love that stuff. That's why I'm playing it now.
Fantastic. And what great music to play. Can you give us, just without going, because we're going to come to it, your sort of current setup, but just along the way, can you give me some background of what you've done musically in the past, but coming up to this point, and then we'll talk about A Foreigner's Journey.
Right. Okay. Well, a natural progression for any musician is eventually to get in a band. I did a little instrumental gig at school, was technically my first ever performance live on a stage. It was 1991, Red Nose Day. A teacher asked me if I would put something together, and I did. And looking back, it must have sounded terrible, but we had fun. But there was no singing. It was all instrumental because nobody dared to sing. And then I left school and I went to college. And my friend who was at school was the bass player. We both went to studied GCSE music at school, so we were in the same class. So we just started mixing with all the other students and stuff. And you know what it's like when you're that age, you start to know who plays what. And, you start to sort of gravitate towards a group of friends. And, oh, he plays guitar. And, oh, he plays drums. And, hey, maybe we should get together and jam and all that kind of stuff. And eventually we did, with this nucleus of people sort of slowly filtered down till there's about a core 4 or 5 of us.
Yeah.
And so we started sort of just jamming at one of the guys' houses. And we didn't really take it too seriously, but it was getting good, just and fun. So it was like, well, maybe we should actually make this a band instead of it just being a mess about. So we started to look at it a bit more serious, and that's the first time we actually formed a band and proper band. And that's where it all started, really. So there was a drummer, me on keyboards, a guitarist, another guitarist, and a bass player, but nobody sang. And this is where I'm kind of a bit unorthodox in many ways, is that when it came to who's going to sing, bass players like, well, I'm not doing it. Drummers like, well, I can't do it. I'm too busy playing drums. Guitarists, well, I'm tone deaf. So eventually it was like, well, I can kind of hold a tune. So the duty was put on me. So it was not through choice, but I started to be the lead singer. And from that point onwards, I've always been a lead singer in every band I've ever been in, apart from the one I'm in now, which is, so even though I'm a keyboard player, I've always seen myself as a bit of a split. I don't see myself as just a keyboard player. In fact, I've probably done more work vocally than I have keyboards, really, when I look back at my time, because I went on to be in lead singer of a jazz orchestra.
Nice.
Stretched my wings a bit with a full jazz orchestra, and that was just purely singing. So again, that forced me to hone my craft a little bit more in the vocal range, and really get to know my singing techniques and stuff. Even though I didn't really know what I was doing, I never had any formal lessons on anything ever. And just one thing sort of led to another, really, so I've done a bit of recording work, a bit of session work, whether it be keyboards or vocals, and different bands. And when one band's finished, I've always set up another band, and then gone to duos, and then done the typical club circuit for years and thrashed that out. And, but I've never really got a break as such. I never really seemed to get to where I wanted to be. So even though I've done all the, I've thrown my hat in the ring of any musical adventure that I thought was worthy, even if it wasn't something that was in my comfort zone, like the jazz orchestra thing, completely out of my comfort zone at the time. But I thought, well, if I do it and I prove I can do it,
Yeah.
then that's like another string to my bow type
Yeah.
situation. So that's how I always saw it. So and then eventually, me and a friend got together and started doing like a real serious prog rock type
Nice.
project. It
Nice.
was just the two of us though. It was we did get some interest from labels and stuff like that, and they were going to throw a couple of musicians at us. I mean, John Macaluso. I don't know if you know that drummer.
I don't know.
Is he came from the band Ark with Jorn Land,
Okay.
and and then Mike DeMeo, who took over from Jorn Land in Masterplan. I don't know if you're aware of them, but
Okay.
he was going to be like the vocalist in it. It
Okay.
all sounded great on paper. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
loads of promises from a record company, but at the end of the day, it was one of those typical things. They weren't prepared to fund it. We had to fund it. We had no money, so the whole thing just
Oh,
house of cards came down. But and I kind of lost a bit of my drive really to
yeah.
do anything perform wise. So I literally had 10 years off performing, gigging. I just recorded at home. You know, I can sing a song right. I do all kind of different styles. I do my own thing, and I've recorded several albums of myself, just do my own thing, really.
Nice.
Um, and as life goes on, you meet partners and you move house. And I moved from Boston to Yorkshire,
Nice.
settled here for 10 years, started doing the club circuit again. And then I did actually know of A Foreigner's Journey
Okay.
beforehand because I saw an advertisement for a vocalist
Okay.
about this was going back about 3 or 4 years ago now, and I thought that sounds good. So I actually applied to be their singer.
Okay.
And unfortunately, they just got the what was the not the now singer, but the singer before. They just got him. So it was like thanks, but no thanks. We've found somebody.
Oh,
So I thought, okay, never mind. But I've always kept them in an interest in the background because I'm a big fan
yeah.
of Foreigner.
Yeah.
Right from they're one of my original bands that I should have mentioned when I was on about the Europe and the Bon Jovi. Foreigner was
Sure.
up there.
Of course.
So I've just kept an eye on them all the in the past. I thought one day I'll have to go see a show of theirs because that sounds like my kind of thing. And then out of the blue, a friend of mine from the sort of club circuit sent me an advertisement saying, "Have you seen this, Lee? Keyboard player wanted A Foreigner's Journey."
Wow.
I thought, all right. So I initially applied, and then for some reason, I don't know why, because I don't know Yorkshire that well. I don't know names and places, but I thought they were based right up north of Yorkshire for some reason. But I initially applied anyway, and Ricky, the guitar player, he initially responded and say, "Yeah, hi," and then I pulled out. I said, "No,
Oh.
you're all right, mate. Yeah, sorry, I
Oh.
don't want to mess you about, but you're too far away." And he was like, "Oh, it's a shame, mate. Never mind. See you later. Good luck." And that was it. And then it was my wife actually. I was flipping through YouTube on some of their videos,
Yeah.
and some of the backstage footage. Ricky comes into the backstage room, and somebody shouts out, "Here comes the Darfield kid!" And my missus says, "Darfield," and I went, "Yeah, it's just a name to me. I wasn't that familiar with it." She said, "Well, you know where that is, don't you?" I said, "Well, no." He said, "Literally 5 minutes away, round the corner." I said, "You're joking? I thought there was like up north." So
That's
he says,
great.
"No." So I looked it on the map, and it is literally 2 minutes drive from my house.
Oh no.
I'm like, so I contacted him back and saying, I got my wires crossed. I thought you was North Yorkshire, and it turns out you're literally around the corner. So he said, "You're joking." So he says, "Well, can you meet me in the pub in 5 minutes?" So I said, "Yeah, I'll be there." So we literally met up in the pub, and as I say, the rest is history. We just got on like a house on fire. Everything that he said to me was like music to my ears. Everything that I sort of produced to him, it was like, "You're perfect for what we're looking for." And they didn't even audition me. They just said,
Wow.
"You've got the job." They told everybody else that had auditioned, "Thanks very much, but we found somebody." And they said, "Right, you got 2 months to get you shit together basically, and here's your start date, and that was it. So it was a bit of a
Fantastic. I mean, if you haven't seen it, I urge you to check this the out the band. It's a very high standard of performance and vocals. Keyboard players are such an intricate part of this music. And you mentioned your vocals. I mean, I've watched through some of the YouTube, through some of the, and I heard you doing one of the ballads you were singing. Was that right on?
Yeah, I do two ballads, Open Arms and Still They Ride.
Great.
Basically, a tip of the hat to Dean Castronova because
Yeah.
he does those. He does those in their live set. They,
Yeah.
you know, the main singer goes off and leaves Dean to do a couple of tracks. So it's kind of like that. You know, the rest of the band go off and I do that kind of little thing. Obviously, I wish I could sing as well as Dean, but I'll do my best.
Sing great, man. I really enjoyed it. Just I've played that a few times. Can you give us a little bit? You know, so you joined the band, you mentioned about that. They said, okay, you're going to join. You got 2 months to sort out your sound. So how did you go about? Look, these are classic, iconic sounds, aren't they? How did you go about sort of starting to get these together? What sort of gear have you put together for this? How did you go about that?
Well, initially I panicked, to be honest, because I thought, crap, now I've actually got to prove my worth here. And how am I going to get these sounds? Because the problem I was finding that you can download tons of sound packs from all over. You know, Nerve Sound do them. You know, Sound Synth Cloud do them. All these packs for Journey or whatever, or you can buy them in like cover band packs. But none of them are compatible to my Korg because I've got a Kronos 1, which is the first one they released, and I just can't afford to upgrade it to a Kronos 2 or 3 or whatever it is now. So even when I found Kronos sound packs, they weren't compatible to the Kronos 1. So I was really having to have a sort of scramble around the internet and messaging here, there, and everywhere that I could find. Has anybody got these patches, but in the Kronos 1 version? And basically it was like a dead end everywhere I went. So I was like, what am I going to do? And then I just came to the realization I'm just going to have to make them myself. There's no other, I've got no choice here, but at least I've got 2 months before I actually start playing live. So I literally just got my head down and started pressing buttons, you know, creating sounds, listening to the albums, you know, the tracks, listening to those really key signature sounds, finding sounds that are as close as I could find, and then just manipulating them, tweaking them, layering them up, and all that kind of stuff until I got about as close as I could find. Then I'd go to the live recordings and see how they changed their sounds compared to the originals, because obviously some of these recordings are like 70s and 80s early synth stuff. So when it comes to the live, more modern sound, they're a bit more cutting. So it gave me a little bit of leeway to, I don't have to sound exactly like the record as long as it sounds very similar. And so I kind of got the album and the live version, and I kind of merged somewhere in between with what I considered sound to be pretty close. And to be honest, I got pretty close on most of them, which I was really chuffed with, because once I got the ball rolling, I started to get the swing of what I'm focusing in on here and what I need to listen to, and what are the really important sounds and ones that aren't so important. Because when somebody's doing something like a Hammond organ, you know, causing the background, it doesn't have to be the exact same Hammond organ. I can get away with a stock organ that sounds roughly what I need. It's the more key signature synth sounds that was more the tricky stuff, and some of the samples as well, which was a bit tricky here and there. But yeah, that's basically what I did. I just put my head down for day after day after day. You know, I was spending like 10 hours a day just tapping away until I got it right. I kept sending videos to the band saying, is this anywhere near it? And I kept going, yeah, it's great, man, just carry on. I'm thinking, well, it's all right you saying that, but is it close? Because I need this to be right, you know. But luckily I put the work in and it paid off, because everything that I put together sounds great live. And
nice, it does.
It was a breath of sorry relief, really, because I'd never really programmed as much as that before. I'd more left, you know, because when you're recording stuff, you can just find the nearest sound that you want. But when it's more specific to a covers band, as well as it being a tribute band, you have to be a little bit more on the, you know, head nail on the head kind of situation. So, but I think I got pretty close on most of it.
got some great sounds. So just as far as where you set up your keyboard, so is it just you use the Kronos?
Yeah. Again, there's a story to that. Not a very big, good one, but when I first joined, because I went to see them live on their last show they did before what was the current keyboard player left. It was his last show, and he has two keyboards. He has a Kronos and a Roland Jupiter 8 or 80, one of the big flagship ones.
Okay.
So he was getting some of the real key signature sounds as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I saw them live, I thought, am I going to be able to do all this on one keyboard? So I was in communication mainly with Ricky, saying, do you think I can manage this on one keyboard? And he was like, doubtful, mate. You know, the old keyboard, he definitely needs two. So again, I kind of panicked and thought, I need to buy a new keyboard then. What a shame. Sorry, wife. But so I took the plunge and I bought one of the new Roland Phantoms, the red ones, the flagship
nice
ones.
Yeah.
In the anticipation that I would need it.
Yeah.
But then once I started programming up the Korg and I started to find my sounds, and because it's 88 key, I've got a lot of room, and I started to find splits where I could split things. It all suddenly sort of fell into place.
Yeah.
And I was assuming that at some point I'm going to have to go to the Rolands and set something up on there. But as time went on and the more I programmed, I just managed to do everything on the Korg.
Yeah.
So I don't use the Roland at all. I've not even took it out of the case since I bought it. And
wow.
It's still in the case at the moment, So and with the Korg, because I've organised it so well. Obviously, I had to make all the sounds first, and then I've just split the keyboard up into however many sections the song requires.
Yeah.
And apart from one song, I don't even have to change patches.
Wow.
Everything's there set. So sometimes I might be playing an organ in the top registers. There might be a synth sound in the middle.
Nice.
There might be a different sound or whatever sounds required in the left, and sometimes even a fourth sound or a sample right at the bottom notes or something where I know where I can trigger it, and it works. The main thing is just remembering where it all was.
That's the thing.
when I first did it all, because I thought, where's that sound again? But obviously it's kind of like second nature now. But it just works like a dream because I don't have to worry about changing sounds. The only sound I do change is in Cold as Ice when I do a keyboard solo, and obviously need the full range of the whole keyboard then. So obviously flip to a solo sound. But as for everything else, it's all just segmented and layered up in certain places and samples, and so it's just so much easier to play because it's such a simple setup. I literally plug in and play, and it's great.
Fantastic. Just around that, just with the sort of keyboard sounds. So do you guys use is there a set list that's nailed down, or does the singer turn around and go, "Hey, let's do Cold as Ice"? Expected places. Do you have everything sort of lined up in a row?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we have got two set lists mainly. We have one main set list, which is usually we do a 2-hour show straight through, no breaks, and that hasn't changed since I joined. And they've been running that set list for quite a number of years, I believe. The only time it changes slightly is when we do a 2-set list when there's a break in the middle, and the ending of the first set kind of like changes a couple of the songs around. But ultimately, other than that, it's pretty much the same set list as the whole shows. So it doesn't really change at all. So obviously with the Korg, I've got the set list function, which is a godsend for keyboards. I couldn't tell you how great that was when that came in compared to previous years, as you all know, trying to remember names and buttons and getting it ready and getting another keyboard ready to press enter to change the sounds. When it's in a set list mode, it's just everything just all in order, any order you want. So everything for me is all pre-programmed up, all in the order of, and I've saved several different sets for different things if we change whatever. So all I've got to do is, how many sets tonight? Oh, it's 1. All right, so I click set 1. How many sets tonight? Oh, it's 2. So I'll just click set 2, and it's already there.
Nice.
If there's any changes or any songs get put in, I can just manipulate and put it in. So again, it couldn't be any simpler for me. It's literally plug in, click the set list that I need. All my sounds are there. I hardly have to change through the songs, and it just runs through one after the other. And it's, my philosophy is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. It's I really used to admire these keyboards. Like one of my first initial influences when I was a kid was Mark Stanway from Magnum, because I got really into Magnum when I was young.
Sure.
And I used to watch the videos of all these different stacks of keyboards, and I think, wow, that's amazing. Imagine being behind all that lot. But until you're in a band yourself and you realise that's a lot of lugging gear about. And as I've got older, my gear's shrunk to now I'm just thinking, I'm 49, I've got a bad back. A keyboard and a stand, that's it. I've set the stand up, I put my Kronos on it, I turn it on, it's all there ready and waiting. A simple sustain pedal. I don't have any other functions because I've got no need for it. No. It's great if you want all these things and you plug it into sequences and on triggering different things and all that, but I just found I don't need it for what I'm doing in this situation, and it's so simple, so I can just relax because it is so simple. I know it's not likely to break down. There's not many connections that can go wrong in that setup. You've got a left and right out and a sustain pedal. That's about as difficult as it gets. So then I can just relax and enjoy the show and perform and not have to worry about things working that well, unless the actual keyboard itself blows up.
Yeah,
I'm pretty fast. Yeah.
So some. I mean, what iconic songs? And loads of them. Like just. So what was? There's got to be a song that you listened to that what you went, how am I going to play this? I guess I want to know what Love Is. Do you do that? That must have been one.
Yeah, we do that one.
Was there anything particular that you sat down and listened to? As I don't know how I'm going to do this. It was a real challenge to go through.
Yeah, there was. It's mainly most of the Foreigner stuff more than the Journey stuff. The Journey stuff is more kind of difficult to play as a piano player because I forgot the guy's name in Journey, the keyboard player.
I'm having the same moment.
His name escapes me now. I know him very well, but I just can't think of his name. But he's obviously just a great pianist, so his things tend to be a bit more intricate playing wise, but they don't really change that many sounds or that many layers. When you listen to the Foreigner stuff, it's like they've got multiple keyboard players on stage. So they've got an organ player. There's Mick Jones sometimes doing the piano parts, and there's a guy in the back doing the synth parts. So it's like, which part do I play? Because I can't play all three because there's physically three guys playing this.
Yeah.
So that was the challenge for me, having to hone stuff down. Like in Cold as Ice, for instance, you've got the piano parts, but then as the piano parts play, an organ comes in. The organ comes on. I think, well, I'm playing the piano, so unless I put an organ somewhere else, I can't play that part. But then I'll need to do, when the piano's playing, the wiggle sound comes in.
Of course.
But the piano part's still playing as well. So I'm thinking, I need to play all these parts. I can't really miss any of them out. So that was the challenge, because what I figured out is that I could play the piano parts, and then obviously have a split with the wiggle sound, as I call it, in the top half. And then what I did, I set the organ as a velocity sensitive organ underneath the piano part.
Good idea.
So the organ wouldn't sound until I pressed a little bit harder. So I could accent when I wanted that organ to come in. So it sounds like there's two players when actually it's still the one. So I got around it in them kind of ways. I was like, just sort of clever thinking, really. But for the most part, and again, some of the other Foreigner stuff feels like the first time there's organs going on. There's an arpeggio in the top, the classic the arpeggio thing that goes on that I'm physically having to play. I didn't have an arpeggio where I just press one finger. I physically play it all.
Nice.
And then there's like the middle section. There's that solo part.
Oh yes.
The breakdown.
Yeah.
So I'd have all those parts set in as well. So they were the biggest challenges, really, because the Journey stuff was still challenging to play, but it was more like they more like just had like one sound. So like Ask the Lonely, it was just this really cool,
Yeah.
big piano-y synth sound, and it plays throughout the
Yeah.
whole song.
Yeah.
There is, but my biggest challenge actually, there was Separate Ways. You know, you're aware of the song?
Do you know that
Yeah.
song? I've played it in the past, yeah.
Well, you might be able to sympathise with me here then, because
I think I can.
I started to play that. I started to learn it. Started to learn it, and I thought, yeah, I've got this one down. Excellent. You know, I've got all the parts there and everything. And I played it to Ricky. I videoed myself playing. He's like, yeah, man, that's great. But can you do the whistle? And I didn't really pick up. I went, what do you mean the whistle? He said, listen to the middle section. There's the big breakdown where it's going back to the keyboard motif. He said a whistle comes in. And I thought, oh right, yeah, I got to play that. And then that's when I hit a stumbling block, because I was playing the with two hands.
Yeah.
When I have to play the whistle sound over that, I have to play that with one hand, and my hands aren't very big. I couldn't physically span from the E to the octave E and then up to the G. I mean, that was a big expanse.
Huge. Yeah.
It's a big stretch, and
that's a big stretch.
I don't know how big Jonathan Cain.
Of course it is.
I don't know if he's got like mammoth hands, but my hands are very small.
That's a big stretch, man. That's a Rick Wakeman stretch, I think.
Yeah, but Ricky was insistent I had to do the whistle.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to do the whistle in my left hand, but I've got to keep that playing in the right hand. But I physically can't make that stretch.
Yeah,
I was scratching my head for ages, thinking, how am I going to get around this? And then you know what it's like one day when you're nodding off to bed and you're sleeping, all of a sudden the light bulb came on. I know what I can do. I hope it works. So basically, what I did is, the synthy sound that it is,
yeah,
and that I play the main part of the song with. I broke that down into 3 sections on the keyboard. So it's essentially if you've programmed this keyboard with 3 different sounds.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's all the same sound, and then all I did was narrow it in.
Yeah.
To one key.
Nice.
The B key.
Yeah.
And I detune that to an E.
Yeah.
So all the other keys are the same, apart from the B is now an E. So instead of having to stretch down to the E, all I had to do is play the B, and it was right there. So then I could do it within the space of an E to a G stance, and it was quite easy. So then I could play that and play the whistle at the same time. But that's the only time. That's the only thing I kind of had to cheat on, because I physically couldn't make that stretch. It was just impossible. So,
that's great. That's great.
That was a challenge, but I got there in the end. So
that's a great story. I mean, it's not a cheat. It's about playing things live. I mean, I guess anyone who's plays Live and Let Die has probably had to do a similar thing, because there's too many lines, aren't there? If you've ever had to play the McCartney stuff, I mean, it's too much going on. So you have to bring some stuff down, move some stuff around. Excellent. So I've been asking everybody just around monitoring on stage. Do you go in ears? Do you go old school? How do you go monitors?
I'm in the process of sorting this out, actually, as we speak, because I've always gone monitors. I found in ears I couldn't get on with them. I tried them for the first time about 5 years ago when I was in a duo doing Clubland, and I just didn't like the closeness. I couldn't seem to project my voice because I was lead singing, so I kind of just done with that. So I tried it, didn't like it, so I just always kept monitors. So obviously when I started this band, I just instantly went to monitors. But I'm finding with this band, because of the volume on stage is so much louder than a duo, where you can control the volume a bit more. Obviously, you've got real drums in there thrashing away, and I was finding that, I could hear myself in the monitors, but the monitors have to be so loud.
Yeah.
And at the end of the gigs, my ears were just like ringing. I mean, I do suffer from tinnitus, unfortunately, but I was just finding it was really starting to aggravate it, where I start to think I've got to do something here to curb this, because if we're going to do more and more shows at this volume, this is going to damage something. So I've actually bought some in-ears. I got Mackey's, and I did have some molds made.
Okay.
But the problem I found with that is that they're not very practical, because it's all right putting them in before you go on stage and all that. But I find that when I need to take one out sometimes,
Yeah.
because you don't always need one in,
No.
I was struggling to get it back in, and I didn't have the time
Right.
to sit there fanning about with my ears. Why? Hang on a minute, guys. The next song started, so I'd leave it hanging out, and then the next song would be a thrasher, and then I'll be like deafened by the drum kit or something. So I kind of got really fed up with them because I just couldn't make them work practically for me live. I couldn't get them in and out fast enough.
Yeah.
I just found them awkward.
Yeah.
So I went back to monitors again, but I was using earplugs rather than monitors, so just to dampen the sound. And that's been working okay to a point, but it's still not ideal because then sometimes you're a bit too cut off. So whether it'll work or not, I don't know. But I've decided I'm going to look into. I've been looking into like drummers' headphones, where they're sound isolated headphones, especially for drummers, where they cut a lot more dB out, and then I can tailor the sound because I've got a little mixer and everything and all that stuff. So I'm going to buy a pair of those and have a bit of an experiment with those. Might look a bit daft wearing a pair of headphones on stage, but Paul Gilbert gets away with it, so why can't I?
Absolutely. And you know what? I'd love to. Perhaps you'll come back sometime and tell us how you got on with those, because it's a really interesting point. And I think just around. Obviously, I've been doing this for a while. I've definitely had some hearing loss, and I think it's just an interesting point, but especially if people are starting to play, it's perhaps something to think about. If I could go back sort of 30 or 40, I would have maybe liked to have a conversation. So perhaps one day we'll have you back and you can tell us how you got on with those. I'd love to.
Yeah, I'll tell you if it works or not. Yeah.
So, look, Foreigner's Journey, do check them out on YouTube and on Facebook. You can go on Facebook, A Foreigner's Journey. I mean, in looking at the gigs for next year, you guys you got a busy January. I mean, in January you're playing in Glasgow and also in Cornwall. So, I mean, you guys are all over the place.
Yeah, it's a long way. Yeah,
it's a long way. But Lee, it's been absolutely brilliant to hear. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your journey. Fascinating band. Do check them out on, as I say, on Facebook and YouTube. And if they come to a town near you, go and see A Foreigner's Journey. You will not be disappointed. It's been brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. It's been wonderful to have you today.
And if anybody wants to check out me anyway, just in general, they can go on YouTube. There's plenty of videos of me at home in my studio, just messing about with stuff, or some songs I've written or stuff, not necessarily A Foreigner's Journey related. Some are, some aren't. Some is original stuff, bits of everything really. Just might show a bit of my background. People see where I'm coming from as a person and a player, and why I'm a bit unorthodox in many respects, because I have always been a singer, keyboard player, and I've never been classically trained or anything like that. It's just by ears, So yeah, check it out. But Our Foreigner's Journey is going to be a great year next year. Apparently, it's the busiest one we're going to have so far. I'm just thrilled to be on board and a part of it, because great bunch of guys. I couldn't wish to be in a better band, to be honest. It's almost like a dream come true for me, because I'm now playing stages that my idols played. I mean, I was playing a gig the other week and I see Mike Tramp's playing there from White Lion, and Jeff Tate from Queensryche. I'm thinking these are bands I grew up listening to, and now I know it's a bit silly, but I'm like treading the same boards as them. It's like I've never had that before, so it's it's not the big time, but it's big enough for me.
There you go.
It's been a long time coming anyway for me. I'm enjoying every moment of it. So it's been great.
And absolutely well deserved. Lee, super talented keyboard player, super talented vocalist. Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you.